Well, welcome back to Behind the Ballot. We are transitioning to the municipal election. You'll see candidates on your TV, and we've got a debate coming up October 10th between the mayoral candidates. And next week, both mayoral candidates will be on one-on-one interviews, and we look forward to that. But in the spirit of the election looming, we have the person in charge, the person that makes sure your vote counts in the city of Peterborough, Mr. John Kennedy, the clerk for the city of Peterborough, and the returning officer for the upcoming election. John, welcome to Behind the Ballot.
Thanks, Jay. Great to be here.
Well, it's great to be here. This is your first appearance on your TV, and we're really glad that this has got to be a crazy busy time. I've worked with other municipalities in my working life, and they've started working on things back at the start of the year. But before we start talking about the election, what's involved, from the administrative side of things, tell us a bit about yourself as city clerk. How long have you been the clerk, and how did you get to come to that role? Because I recall you were working in a totally different field at one time.
Correct. I've been with the city since 1991. So I started out in the environmental area down there with the chemistry lab. And then back in about 2006, a secondment brought me up to City Hall for policy work. And that's what led me into the clerk's office in 2007. So I started there as deputy clerk, and I've been city clerk since 2013. So it's been a bit of a journey. And
what a diverse experience from one end to the other. There's probably some jokes there because going from the sewage treatment plant to where most of the well, I'll leave that joke there because I don't think it was coming together.
That's right.
But with all due respect to all our politicians out there, but John, tell us a bit about the role you have as clerk. What are the main duties for the clerk, and then specifically tell us a bit about what you're doing with the election.
Yeah, in terms of the clerk's role, we have a variety of duties. Our office is involved in business licenses, marriage licenses. We facilitate road closures for special events. We produce the agendas for council meetings, attend the meetings and assist with any procedural matters or record the motions there. Members of the public that are interested in obtaining information, they can do so through our office. We facilitate the process under the Freedom of Information. And then on to the election side of it, we're involved in facilitating the election there for both the candidates and also for the members of the public, the voting electorate.
This year, do we put X's on ballots? Do we vote online? Can we phone a vote in? What's the plan for the city of Peterborough?
Great question. We're using the same technology and the same voting opportunities as we had in 2014, which is vote via the internet, and also we'll have walk-in polls to cast your ballot in paper, if that's your choice.
What do you guys prefer?
I'll probably do it the day of.
Yeah. Walk-in?
Oh no, online. Press a button. Are you kidding? Deal with people? Stand in line?
There's some romantic nostalgia for writing that X or filling in the box or.
Well, I'm really glad I got a diversity of opinion there, because I've got to say, as someone who's voted in every election since I could, I do like going to a polling station. You usually see the same people. I've lived in the same place for over 30 years. And it moves around a bit, but our daughter does that. We like going, and doing it online, I just have a concern with security and how can, with all the hacking that goes on and all the stuff you hear about, how can we be sure that someone down the road can't look up and see who you voted for?
No, it's a fair point. The provider that we use, they go through a lot of extensive testing to obviously to make sure their systems are secure for those very reasons. And then in turn, we actually do a number of in-house testing as well. And then further to that, we also hire a independent third party to do some auditing as well. So we've got about 3 different levels of security there to make sure that the system is secure. And it's a fairly general question we get asked about, if I do vote by the internet, can someone find out how I voted? And the answer is no. The system is designed that you cannot connect the vote to the voter.
Ah.
Yeah.
But that information has to be retained similar to ballots, so it is saved somewhere for a certain period of time?
Correct. There is an image of the vote retained, much like if you do on the paper side through the tabulator, the image is retained. Again, it doesn't connect to the voter, but it is retained in the event that a recount was required. So you have the ability to go back and actually then simulate the counts to fulfill that requirement.
Now, just in regards to accessibility, I mean, we were talking to Dave Smith in the green room before the show, and he had said that, when he was campaigning, he went out to someone's door. There was, that one person who said, oh, there's an election going on like a week beforehand. So how do you make sure that people know that there's a chance to get out and vote? Because there's a lot of people that don't.
That's our job, Taylor.
Great answer.
You help do that.
Yeah, we appreciate that too. We've updated our election web pages there. We've freshened them up, and we've got Peterborough-Votes.ca is a great resource for all that information. And then, of course, as the days progress here, we have a lot of media releases that will go out to try to capture those key steps and let people know what's coming up and when they can vote. And voter cards are going to be out shortly. So that's another cue for those that see that in their mailbox. Say, yeah, the vote's coming up.
One thing I have noticed, and maybe I just noticed it this year, was there are actually sort of flags and promotional posters have popped up telling people to vote and where they can vote well in advance of the election. Now, I've seen that in other places in Ontario. Is that happening here in Peterborough as well? Are there signs that are up kind of reminding people this election's coming up?
Yeah, the candidates are allowed to put their signs out following Labor Day. That's our local bylaw permits that, and you've probably seen those around town.
Is that the Gary Herring bylaw that remember Councillor Gary Herring put them up 2 years ahead of time?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think they call it that, but it was it was a little too early. So that's a rule that's adhered to now.
Yeah, and most municipalities usually have some sort of instructions or deadlines on timelines when you can actually put your signage up. So.
I actually have a question about signage, because my parents, and I won't name which candidate is doing this, but have been leaving sign after sign after sign on my parents' lawn, and my parents keep uprooting them and throwing them in their garage. So what's the recourse for people who signs end up on their property and they don't want them there?
I would suggest you contact the candidate. Perhaps it's a case the candidate didn't know that someone has maybe moved a sign there. They were unsure of that. I think most candidates are very respectful of people's wishes and would only put signs on lawns that they've been asked to do so. So it may be a case that they just weren't aware it was there.
So a follow-up to that, and I think I know where your parents live, people might think that it's, there could be a conception that it's a misconception that it's public property. And I'm just guessing, I don't know if that's the case, but is it legal to put signs on public property anywhere, and how do candidates know what's public and what's not?
Yeah, we've outlined through our candidates guide and our information sort of where the signs can go. So, residential is always preferred, but we do allow them on public property, and it's we don't want them in, say, the middle of parks. They are allowed on the road easement ways, and of course there are restrictions on sign heights and that, so that there's no impediment for visual impediments for drivers, and we don't want them too close to corners and the larger signs in those areas where it might impede someone's sight triangle if they're at a corner. So we do try to restrict where they go.
Well, I was impressed with the Nichols Oval's gates, the Nichols Oval's East gates on Park Hill, where the candidates have actually, they look like they've stylized the sign. Someone got a big one in the middle, but all the Ashburnham candidates, and they just kept adding on, so they're all covered off there. But it's very visible, and obviously it's a public park there. But that's interesting. And how about stealing of signs? I see in Lindsay, and we have viewers in Lindsay, that seems to be an issue. Is that a concern in Peterborough? Have you had any complaints about sign stealing already?
Every election we do get a few complaints about that, and it's unfortunate. It is essentially an act of vandalism or a criminal act if you are stealing someone's property. So it is unfortunate, but it does seem to happen in every community. Yeah.
Let's get down to the nuts and bolts. What do people need to do to make sure they can vote in the city of Peterborough?
I think one of the first things is just to make sure you're on the list. So perhaps if you're new to the community, or if you've been here for a long time but perhaps you've moved addresses, it's good to check to see if you're actually on the list. And you can do that several ways. Again, if you want to check online, you can go to Peterborough-Votes.ca, and we do have a portal there where you can put in your information to determine if you are on the list and if the information is correct. If it's not, the portal also allows you to actually submit your updated information, your documentation, to get yourself on the list. Or if you'd prefer to come in person, you can attend the clerk's office, and we can do the same thing in person.
Okay, the clerk's office, you come into City Hall, 500 George Street, turn left.
You've got
You're
it.
still there.
Still there, yeah.
Now, can students vote if they only live here part of the year? I don't even know.
That's a great question, yeah. Students are in a bit of a unique situation. So if they live, as an example, if a student lived in Kingston and they reside at their parents' place, they can vote there if they're eligible. And if they are here at school, let's say one of the post-secondary institutions, they can also vote here as well.
They can vote in. They can vote here.
Yeah,
Or
they
vote in
can.
two places?
They can vote in 2 places.
No kidding.
As
I
long
didn't
as
know
you're
that.
a ratepayer or paying rent, that's deemed to be your place of residence, right?
Correct. Yeah,
So-
you can
Right.
substantiate that you have, you know, a residence here, you know, and you're eligible.
As an apartment building dweller, I have had a couple people ask me about that. So if you are in an apartment building or a rooming house or something like that, what's the rules with that? Can you put a sign on the lawn? Is that only for the landlord to be doing that? Can the landlord put a sign like right in front of your window, or what are the rules around apartment buildings?
Yeah, we usually get questions on that as well.
Yeah.
We typically instruct the caller to contact their landlord. The landlord's the property owner, and find out what the rules are. There may be rules in agreements, you know, lease agreements as to what can and cannot happen. And at the end of the day, you're now on private property, which you know, is sort of out of our jurisdiction. So it's into a civil matter.
Yeah, no, because I do, you actually can see in watching elections in Peterborough, there's certain properties owned by landlords, and the signs go up, and without, I'm sure, a lot of consultation with the tenants. A lot of tenants just go with the flow, but yeah, that's something, and I guess in apartment buildings probably don't want to be pasted with signs, but hey, that's part of it. Hey, what, in this election, how many voters do you anticipate we're going to get out? Do you recall what the last municipal election turnout? It was pretty low, wasn't it?
It wasn't too bad, no. Last election we had approximately 58,000 eligible electors in the city. And as I recall, we had around about a 47% turnout, which is in around maybe 27,000.
It's still under that 50%.
Yeah, I think traditionally many municipalities experience a less than 50% turnout. Yeah.
And how do you get more people out to vote? I guess by watching our show, learning about the issues. We hope we're doing our part, and you guys with the newspapers, but less than half the people voting as to who's going to make decisions for them. Do you guys ever gather as clerks and figure out ways you can help your politicians to encourage people to vote? Is that an ongoing process?
Absolutely. You know, I think for our part, we try to make elections as customer service friendly as we can, so that to make it as easy as possible to get out there. That's where really we felt the internet voting and the traditional polls just gave some a couple opportunities for people to vote if they wish to. You mentioned the media. That's another great source. And we're always trying to come up with new ideas. One that we instituted in 2014 was to have an app. So the city of Peterborough has an app, and we have an election section on that app. So it's a way to get that information if you want to have it on your phone, you know, as opposed to the website. And then we try to do our best with our messaging as those milestone dates come into play, and just to make sure that it's out there and people are aware of it.
I got to think the politicians think, oh, only 47% of the people voted, only 47% can complain, but they don't know who voted, so I guess they can't go by that.
Very
but
true.
I want to ask you, just sort of getting just back to council. So when I've interviewed other councillors, we've talked about council the last couple of terms. You haven't seen the long midnight hour, and you've got to be thankful as a clerk. I always feel bad for the staff sitting there, debates going on. Do you guys have to get up and be at work at 8:30 the next morning?
We do, yeah. We're all there the next morning, yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought maybe you'd get to come in a little later, but you know, and some of the politicians work, some don't, or they have their own businesses.
Yeah.
But so you just go with the flow.
We're usually back in the morning there, yeah, as best we can. The next day started.
Yeah. These guys wanted to ask you who your favorite politicians are, but I'm pretty sure you can't answer that. You like them all equally, don't you?
All of them equally. Great answer. All of them equally.
So, in the time that you've been city clerk, how many councils have you been through?
Several. It was Mayor Ayotte when I started in the clerk's office, and then moved to we have 2 terms of Mayor Bennett. So this would be coming up. It would be my 4th, I guess, term of council.
So who's responsible? So what happens actually when a new council comes in and you have people who are new to being politicians, new to the councillor position? Is there like a scrum where you give them the lowdown on everything they need to know? What color ties they're allowed to wear in council chambers, or?
Yeah, we run an orientation session for members of council and make sure they have the information they need to do their job, and you know, answer their questions and get them prepared as best we can, so that when the the new year starts, the meetings start up, that they're comfortable and ready to go.
Well, John, on that note, we're just about out of time. I guess we just want to remind people that they should get out and vote October 22nd, and there are advanced polls as well, and they'll be well advertised.
Yeah, we've got, starting with October 9th, right after Thanksgiving, is the opening of advance period. And that's when internet voting starts.
Right.
That runs straight through until October 22nd. The polls close at 8 p.m. Internet voting is a two-step process. You register first.
And you register, and we're going to have to stop it there. So maybe we'll have to have you back on